From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's coming up. K-State's Dan O'Brien will take a closer look at the positives and negatives currently at work in the corn market and how those might impact you producers' harvest time marketing decisions. That part of Dan's weekly commentary on the grain market trends. Then the final installment in our series of visits this week with county and district extension agricultural agents who've been here in Manhattan for the K-State Research and Extension Annual Conference. Today, a look at the year agriculturally in the Garden City area from Finney County Extension Agent Jennifer Stoss. And further ahead with the latest on the Kansas Agricultural Weather Outlook, K-State's Mary Knapp. All this and more next on Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
You are listening to Agriculture Today, our Friday edition. Glad to have you aboard once more. In studio now is Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. Dan happens to be in Manhattan this week for the annual Research and Extension Conference and has stopped by to share his latest thoughts on the grain trades. Dan, we will spend some extra time today exploring the positives and negatives of the corn market as you put them together in a new analysis. But just checking back on the trade this past week seems to be in the midst of a downbeat in virtually all the markets.
Well, I think in the grains we're affected by the return of better weather for harvest. In the last several days, we'd seen some support as rain had come, and particularly in the Western Corn Belt, kept combines out of the field, and there were questions about what type of weather patterns were coming, whether we're going to continue to have harvest delays. But now forecasts have apparently cleared up, and we're seeing that concern being taken out of the market. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have crop quality problems. There might, in some low areas, still be issues, but in terms of the overall forecast, it looks like a better harvest situation. So that's, I guess, the market giveth and the market taketh away, and that the concerns about that helped us over the last several days, and now as we come to the end of the week, apparently it's heading the other way. I think the other big issue has to do with what's happening in financial markets. It's interesting on Thursday's closes, corn, especially soybeans, wheat, all lower. Energy markets just so to lower. It seems like the one thing that's up is the U.S. dollar index. And I think there are, as I understand it, there are announcements or at least rumors in financial markets of the direction of the U.S. Fed. Of course, the tie-in there would have to do with exports. Again, if the U.S. Fed takes action to raise interest rates as a means to forestall off what could happen in the future in terms of inflation. As interest rates would go higher, then the value of the dollar tends to respond positively to that as well. So a higher U.S. dollar is an issue that's interpreted as negatively. So here on the one hand, in grains, you have the return to somewhat better weather in large swaths of the Corn Belt, tied in with concerns that the dollar is going higher, and both of those having a negative effect, at least on yesterday's markets.
And that strengthening of the dollar then, of course, will weave into our outlook for exports. The latest indicators or signals on exports suggest that this news about the dollar's strength comes at an inopportune time when you look at the fall-offs in corn and grain sorghum anyway.
It'd be nicer if it didn't come right during harvest. Right. It comes right during harvest. It's just a matter of piling on, Really, an overall picture of the corn market, at least in my view, is that, again, the big issue with the feed grain markets, corn in particular, is that we have large supplies. Again, we're projected to see a 14.8 billion bushel U.S. corn crop. That's the second highest on record, below the 15.1.5 or so that we had 2 years ago. So large corn production, add on to that about 2 billion bushel carry-in, 2.1 or so, you end up with record high supplies. So that's the big issue. We just have lots of corn around. But there are positives, and even the variability to the downside of the last day or so I don't think they offset the positive, potentially positive factors that'll come in the corn market. One would be, again, really pretty strong U.S. exports. We just talked about how the dollar could have an impact on this, but in the larger picture, you still had some shortness of crop last year in Brazil. The crop that's projected now for 18-19 won't be harvested until off into February, March, April, May, and later next year. So that short crop in Brazil has driven business to the U.S., and now we're looking at a 2.5 billion bushel projection for exports. When we've been tough, we're below 2. Well, that extra 400 or 500 million is a positive thing for the corn market. The good thing about corn exports, if they come, is that it's new, fresh news to the market every week. You know, that has the potential to provide us, coming out of harvest, with some support for the market. I do think that even though we're seeing some negative impact on ethanol futures, still we're on line with pretty cheap corn prices to have a large amount of ethanol being used, which will draw corn into those ethanol plants. And we have the announcement of E15 coming on as a year-round mode. I don't know that you'll have instantaneous response to that, but that's an underlying support. And the thing that I wonder on is we have been having over the last several months with strong ethanol usage a buildup of ethanol stocks. In fact, we've seen, as the economy has been doing well, we've seen RBOB gas prices, what we blend ethanol with, running higher in ethanol prices, just so if not declining. Well, now with E15, do we have the situation where eventually we're going to, with more demand pull, will we be able to pull down the ethanol stocks? And I think that's probably what you have to be optimistic about. E15, if we came all the way in terms of shifted from E10 to E15 and fully adopted it, it's about, well, arguably 33 to 40% more ethanol production, and that percentage more feed grain production being used. So we'll see where that goes. And I think the biggest issue in the corn market that I guess that we're only paying marginal attention to at this point will be, I guess, questions related to the crop mix they'll have in South America. Very likely with the tremendous positive soybean prices they're seeing now, because China is buying soybeans from Argentina and Brazil to the degree that we're now shipping soybeans to Argentina. And rumored to maybe do that to Brazil, basically to keep their processing plants going, because they're sending their supplies out the door unprocessed to China. So anyway, we have those issues. So with that type of incentive, what will they do with corn acres? Unless they break out new land, which they could, but they have environmental resistance to that, regulatory resistance to it, it's very likely they'll increase soybean acres, be lower on corn acres. When will this news come to the market? Through December, January, February, March. So there's a case to be built for the potential for some underlying positive prospects to be coming into the corn market after we get through with the harvest season.
Of course, the pressing question, Dan, will the positives offset the negatives? And that's reflected in your price probability outlook for corn that you just put together for this week. Yeah,
again, you have to look at the USDA's numbers and think, gosh, 6 out of 10, 60%, over half, they're probably right. Then that would be 180.7 bushels per acre, 14.778 billion bushels production. By the time you run through everything, ending stocks about 1.8 billion bushels, about 12% stocks to use 350 price. If after we finally get into waterlogged fields all the way in northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, and Wisconsin, all those areas, we end up and we lose about 2 bushels of corn down to 178.5, the second highest on record. Then you drop from 14.8 down to about 14.6 billion bushels, shave some production off. Stocks get whittled down by about the same, about 200 million. Basically, by the time you run all that through, you add about a quarter onto the price. If you have higher exports, and I think that's a possibility, especially with the South American situation, instead of 2.475, you go to 2.55, something like that. You jump up 125, 150 million bushels, and if you have the same production we have now, you're about 360 or so. If you have the combination of both higher exports and lower production, then you're getting closer to $394.
Nothing revolutionary, though.
Nothing revolutionary. The surprise that would have to happen is a repeat of something like this year in South America, where they have way more cut back on production than they thought they would ever have. And if that happens, then you've got a whole new set of considerations. And our corn price heading off into spring ends up, well, it's $4 and something. But right now, they're supposed to be wet there, and rain doesn't always make grain in South America. Sometimes it floods it out. But we will not have the answer to that question until we get on to February, March, April, May. And so people that are storing corn somewhat speculatively, which is what would happen, waiting for some seasonal strength, they would be rewarded if that occurs.
Quick note on soybeans, and here we find that the exports have picked up some, converse to what we see in corn and grain sorghum. So maybe that'll lend some support at some point.
Soybeans on yesterday's trade, November 18, down 22.25 cents. But yet the actual shipment number for the week ending October 11th was up substantially. So obviously in the market's mind, news about the dollar trumped what they were seeing in terms of actual movement. But not a bad week in terms of soybean shipments, about 43-some million bushels, and we've been having 30 and 25. So good week of shipments really for the week ending the 11th. It seems to me that the trade issues are looked at first and foremost by the soybean market as part of their narrative on how they understand that. They see the tariffs that China's put on the U.S. and they think negative, period. And if competitive pressures are going to come in underneath that, and with other countries stepping up to buy soybeans in place of that, apparently it's going to be sort of like Missouri. They'll have to show us which countries are stepping up and buying more soybeans. There's a number of them. It's a substantial amount. The only one that's vacated the premises is China. But I don't think it'll take long for folks to buy to value. And if you were to resolve this, there might be a few hard feelings, but man, that's a bargain over there. I think the dollars will drive this sentiment.
Economics do talk, don't they?
They do.
Good to have you by, Dan. We'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Grain market economist Dan O'Brien of K-State Research and Extension. Agriculture Today returns in a moment on the K-State Radio Network.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Welcome back. You are tuned to Agriculture Today. As we've been noting all through the week, we're making the full effort to catch up with county and district extension agricultural agents as they've been attending the annual Research and Extension Conference here at K-State this week. And we'll talk with an individual who's been on board in Finney County as the Extension Agriculture and Horticulture Agent for just a short while, but she has good familiarity with agriculture in western Kansas. And Jennifer Stoss is her name. Jennifer, you just joined the extension crew in Finney County a few months ago. Is that correct?
That would be correct. It's been a whirlwind so far.
In that respect, then, a bit about your background. You have been in western Kansas as an agricultural professional even long before this, right?
That would be correct. So I originally started off in Colorado. That's where I was born and raised. But I've actually lived in western Kansas for 10 years. People call me crazy coming from the mountains to Kansas, but I love it here. I love the farming. I love the agriculture and everything that you can learn. So I went to Fort Hays. I actually taught for 3 years in Nest City, and then I just moved to Garden City to get this position, and I've been here since June, and it has been busy, but I'm loving it so far, and I'm learning so much.
As a new agricultural agent, then what's your favorite aspect of the new assignment?
I really have enjoyed just getting to learn not only the families in Finney County, but the history, the agriculture, the horticulture, and I've also just really gotten to enjoy meeting everyone from around the state and just really learning about what their specialties are and everything.
That's been part and parcel of what you've picked up at this conference then this past week, right?
Yes, and they really like to send us through a lot of trainings, and so I've been through a lot of trainings and now this conference, and so it's a really awesome opportunity to meet and to collaborate with a lot of other agents, whether they're ag, horticulture, 4-H, even family and consumer science agents.
Very well. Wanted to tap you for your observations on how agriculture has gone in Finney County this past year, and one would have to bring up right away the fact that it's been an unusually moist year in that county, right?
Yeah, that is correct, and so there's been so many days that we've gotten just so much rain that farmers have just, taken the day off, which is awesome for them. But it always seems to be that we get the rain right when it's about harvest time or planting time. And so it kind of slows the rate down for that. But so far we have gotten slammed with rain, and it happens all at the same time.
So you have harvest delays in your county?
We've had a little bit of harvest delays, more so just planting delays. So trying to get that wheat in, and the perfect timing, it seemed to be that either rain was coming and we had to hurry and get it in, or, it started raining, so had to wait a little bit.
Despite those delays, how have the crops looked? They must be in pretty good shape, aren't they?
Yeah, we've actually had pretty good to even excellent crop conditions throughout our county, and I work and communicate a little bit with one of our agronomists in the county, and so that's been really nice to hear a little bit from him of what he thinks the crops look like as well too.
So across the board, and it's largely corn and grain sorghum, a few soybeans maybe here and there irrigated?
Yeah, that would be correct.
In that it's been so wet in that county, have your irrigators been able to pare back on their applications, unusually so?
Yeah, so that's something that we try and press to them, is because it has rained, you don't need to be using those irrigation pivots as much as you have been. And because I'm also on the horticulture side of things, I see a lot of people, it's been raining all night or all day, and they still have their sprinklers on at home. And so that's another area that we really try and educate to the community. It just rained for the whole day. You don't need to turn your sprinklers on today or even maybe for a few days. So just really getting into people, that water conservation is key, especially in southwestern Kansas.
As we're still on the irrigation topic here, there have been interesting developments as far as the potential for saving irrigation water through new technology, and Garden City is one of the epicenters for that work with the mobile drip irrigation and so forth. Do you see those new ideas starting to really take root with your producers?
That has been something interesting, and that's actually one of the tours that I went to this past summer, as they went through and did, I believe they call them the Water Tech Farms, and so they actually had one right south of Garden City that I went to, and so that was very interesting to watch and to see the farmer and just all the research and information that has been founded from that, and how we can conserve water through those certain ways. I think it's something that is still trying to build and let farmers trust the fact that there is new opportunities that maybe conserve a little bit more water, just because you don't have drift with the wind and that kind of thing.
But there is an interest in it because your producers are, in fact, attuned to the need to conserve that resource.
That would be correct. I think over the last few years, there's been a lot of people who have really gone out and educated and just made it publicly aware that we are losing water, and it is not something that we can just freely use. And so I think it's really come to the farmers' attention, and I think the farmers have known that, but maybe just the main public's attention, and so that's been really helpful.
Well, Jennifer, on the livestock side, and we would speak to your county being feedlot cattle country, no question about that. It's been a pretty stable year for your feedlot operators, has it not?
Yeah, it's been a pretty good year for our feedlot, and yeah, we are king out there.
When you think about your either crop or livestock producers. What do you think are the biggest challenges before them right now?
Well, I would definitely think one of the biggest problems, and that's for any farmer, is we need to start looking at the future and how we can see feeding a growing population on less land. They project that there's going to be, I think it was 2 billion more people on this world by 2050. And if we are having more people on less land, how are we going to serve that purpose? And so technology can feed a lot into that, but it's using the technology correctly and adequately enough to make sure that it's actually helping us instead of hindering us. And so I think that's one huge issue that the farmers are seeing and trying to solve. I think another one is, which I really am huge on advocating for, is just educating the public on agriculture and that connection between, the soil to getting it on your plate. Just educating people about why farmers and ranchers do the things that they do, so that they have that value and that respect for farmers and agriculturalists.
And when you say educating the public, that doesn't necessarily mean just the urban areas on the east and west coasts. Even someplace like Garden City, that cause is important.
That is very correct, yes. All over the county and all over the country, you can see several people that do not understand that process of, how farmers and ranchers work and what they do. So it's a huge issue right now that we are running into, and how exactly we can educate those people about these things.
Well, Jennifer, you've been on board for a relative short time. Have you any special or unique programs that you've either launched or would like to get started in Finney County here in the relative near future on the agriculture side?
So I had a program that I did. It was more for the horticulture side of things, but it was a lot about preparing your garden, which actually could apply to farmers as well, because it was talking about what you can do now to prepare for the spring. And so a lot of things just like soil health and cleaning up, just making sure that diseases and pests don't harbor over the winter to come back and affect your crops or your plants or your garden the next year. And so that was one of the programs that I did before. They actually do have specialists coming out to travel all over Kansas to do a calving school, which has been a huge hit over the last few years. We did apply for that, but sadly we didn't get it. But I'm hoping that in the future we'll get that, and I'm excited to attend the one in Montezuma, which is pretty close to where I am now. And then other than that, I really want to work with people on water conservation and understanding how important it is to conserve water, whether you're a person brushing your teeth in the morning or whether you're a farmer using irrigated pivots.
So, as you look ahead to 2019, the attitude of your producers coming off a pretty decent year or better overall, how do you perceive that?
I definitely think that farming is gambling. And you really just because you had one good year, I think farmers still look at it as, we've got to always look at next year and what could possibly be the outcome. And so I think that's kind of what they're looking at right now.
Well, you're just now really embarking on your extension career, so we wish you the best as you get that program established in Finney County, and we'll be watching and wishing you the best in pulling all of that off. Jennifer, thank you for talking with us right here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me come and have the opportunity to be on the radio show, and I look forward to learning and listening more.
She's Jennifer Stoss, Finney County Extension Agricultural Agent, among the many agents in town this week for the 2018 Research and Extension Conference at Kansas State University. Jennifer's been our guest on this part of Agriculture Today. Now, this break, we'll return with today's agricultural news headlines plus more for you here on the K-State Radio Network. Please stay with us.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today, and welcome back. Eric Atkinson here. To today's agricultural news headlines for you now, courtesy in part of DTN. The Trump administration's regulatory agenda released this week indicates they will not issue a new Waters of the United States rule until March of next year. The agency is continuing work on a parallel process to replace the rule and will release a draft version of the replacement within the coming days, according to Acting EPA Chief Andrew Wheeler. It's possible the federal courts hearing challenges to the WOTUS rule will act to overturn it before the EPA's repeal is actually complete next year. That's according to the American Farm Bureau Federation General Counsel Ellen Steen. The EPA acknowledged that the court decision from earlier this year means that WOTUS is in effect in some states, but not others. Agency spokesperson Tricia Lynn said the EPA is working with the Corps of Engineers, which also handles water jurisdiction issues, to answer questions on a case-by-case basis about whether a body of water is covered by federal law. Lynn told Bloomberg that the agencies recognize the uncertainty this decision has created and are committed to working closely with states and stakeholders to provide updated information on an ongoing basis about which rules are in place in which states. Dairy interests have long contended imitation milk products violate federal standards. Todd Domer reports here that the government is seeking public input on this controversial topic.
The dairy industry is encouraged by the Food and Drug Administration's public comment period on the labeling of plant-based proteins with names specific to dairy production. Dairy groups have engaged with FDA for years in an attempt to get the agency to address concerns about how imitation products are marketed as dairy items to consumers. The concern over accurate labeling extends to nutrition shortfalls and the implications for public health. The dairy industry repeatedly has pointed out the proliferation of products falsely labeled as milk, yogurt, cheese, ice cream, and butter amounts to consumer fraud. FDA is asking for input on how consumers use plant-based products and how they perceive terms such as milk when it is attached to imitation dairy foods. I'm Todd Domer.
The USDA Secretary has expressed his pleasure that the United States will soon enter negotiations with major trade partners Japan, the European Union, and the United Kingdom. Here's more on that from the USDA's Rod Bain.
The U.S. Trade Representative's Office recent notification to Congress it will enter negotiations on behalf of our country with important trading partners has many in the ag sector excited about the potential expansion into those markets. That includes Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue.
Obviously, we've been looking forward to having very serious negotiations with Japan and the EU,
as well as the United Kingdom, according to the Secretary who talked to reporters in Virginia Thursday. He notes that based on the timing of the notification by USTR and current statute, negotiations with both Japan and the EU should begin sometime after the start of 2019.
The statute requires 90 days notification for Congress.
Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says U.S. and U.K. negotiations won't begin until the U.K. formally leaves the European Union, which is expected by no later than late March. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
And by the way, to remind you once again, Secretary Perdue will be the next speaker in K-State's Landon Lecture Series. That'll take place Thursday, November the 1st in McCain Auditorium, 10:30 that morning. The lecture is free and the public is invited to attend. The Secretary will be the 179th speaker and 11th Secretary of Agriculture to take part in that lecture series. Well, from estate planning to the latest in production agriculture technology and everything in between will be covered in the 2019 Women Managing the Farm Conference taking place this coming February here in Manhattan. This outstanding program continues to grow in popularity, and registrations are now being taken. Marcia Boswell has a full preview on this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop. Marcia?
Keynote speakers have been announced for the award-winning Women Managing the Farm Conference, set for February 7th and 8th, 2019 in Manhattan, Kansas. Since 2005, this event has been bringing together female farmers, rural business leaders, and landowners. The Women Managing the Farm Conference provides a supportive setting in which women can develop the skills, resources, and knowledge needed for success in a competitive agricultural environment. Conference sessions are designed to keep women up to date on the latest advancements in agriculture and thriving within their rural communities. During the two-day conference, attendees select from presentations covering many topics, including farm finances, relationships and health, agricultural and estate law, crop production and marketing, management, and more. Attendees also choose networking sessions tailored to the different roles women hold, such as agricultural partners and helpers, independent producers, absentee landowners, ag industry career women, and business managers. Optional pre-conference workshops are offered on Wednesday, February 6th. They include sessions about precision agriculture technology, viticulture and enology, as well as introductory and advanced sessions on QuickBooks. The 2019 conference will open Thursday morning with a presentation by Dr. Jason Lusk, a food and agricultural economist who studies what we eat and why we eat it. Other general session presenters for 2019 include attorney Stacy Seibel, who practices estate planning law and will present Designing the Future of the Farm, estate planning to make the farm a perfect fit for the next generation. Dr. Michael Taylor, KSU Associate Professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics, will discuss navigating negotiations. And Amanda Friend, a third-generation family farmer, will discuss managing 3 farm businesses, a dairy farm, a farm market and bakery, and their value-added product, cow pods. Registration for the conference is available at womenmanagingthefarm.com, with an early bird registration of $140, available through December 14th. After this date, the regular registration fee is $160 through January 25th. The Women Managing the Farm Conference is sponsored by various agricultural organizations, including by Kansas wheat farmers through the Kansas Wheat Commission's 2-penny wheat assessment. More information about speakers, programs, exhibitors, registration, and scholarships can be found at the website womenmanagingthefarm.com or by calling 785-532-2560. Keep up to date with the latest Women Managing the Farm news through facebook.com/womenmanagingthefarm. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Many thanks, Marcia, and we'll be back shortly with more here on Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. Closing out this Agriculture Today, we've brought by once again Research and Extension climatologist at K-State, Mary Knapp, to fill us in on the latest on Kansas agricultural weather from the Weather Data Library here at the university. And now we do have, Mary, a full account of the recent rainfall around the state and how that then dovetails into the latest drought monitor. What do the numbers tell us?
Well, looking at the period from October 10th to October 16th, it was wetter than normal statewide.
No surprise.
No surprise. All of the divisions were very wet. Eastern divisions were not as wet as the West because we typically see more moisture. They ranged from 167% in the Northeast to 170% in the Northwest. Still wet. Out west, the West Central kind of led the pack. They were 3.25 times their normal rainfall. They saw an average of 1.27 inches, which is almost a full inch above what they would typically expect during the week. Year to date, most of the state is above normal. It's actually running at 112% of normal. The exceptions are the Northeast, which is 99% of normal, which is about as close as you can get without going over. The East Central, where a lot of the drought has been most severe, is at 87%. And speaking of drought, no surprise that the latest drought monitor has done a big number on erasing most of the drought in the state. We still have about 10% of the state that's under some form of either abnormally dry conditions or moderate drought. We've completely taken out any severe, extreme, or exceptional drought, given the fact that we're now on like our fourth week of above normal rainfall across the area.
And to depict that further, your year-to-date totals would say that virtually all of Kansas is well ahead of the game, and those that have been lagging behind are close to catching up to normal.
Right, exactly. And if we look at our growing season, which is April 1st to the present, only the East Central is lagging a little bit, and they're still at 92% of normal, which, given our variability in rainfall, is certainly not anything surprising. Also, we've been working with a new tool on the Kansas Mesonet, looking at soil moisture. Hopefully we'll be able to roll it out shortly, but what we've been seeing on that is you look at the beginning of October and the surface was dry in the west with some subsoil moisture. Now it's pretty much wet across the board and at least down to the 8-inch depth.
Yeah, and hence our persistent harvest delays around Kansas. Just briefly here, that soil moisture chart, the new Mesonet product, it'll be out soon, but it'll be a running account of soil moisture levels at the various depths, you say.
Right. You'll be able to look at the current conditions across the network and then look at the different profiles and how they're changing and how they match up with rainfall events. So was that rainfall enough to create a significant difference, not just at the surface, but as it penetrates that soil profile?
Looking forward to that coming out at mesonet.ksu.edu. And virtually every spot in the state has logged its first frost of the season, Mary, officially.
Right. That was the other big story. We got not just our first frost, but in many cases our first hard freeze. The exception was extreme southeastern Kansas. They did get some 32-degree readings, but not necessarily extended periods of time or the very cold. In contrast, you go up into northwest Kansas, our automated station just south of St. Francis logged a 9-degree low. So again, very, very cold in that area. Some places had as much as 36 hours below freezing and a good number of hours below that 24-degree range. So surface vegetation suffered greatly from that. If there was any sorghum out there that hadn't matured, not going to have much recovery on that at all, though you won't have any on that. The other big issue is in the soybeans, where we're going to be facing issues with shattering, maybe some cases of sprouting beans in the pod because we're warming up a little bit, enough to get that going. If you've got corn, the big issue will be how quickly that corn will dry down. And when you get these very cold temperatures, that tends to delay the dry down capability, so that complicates harvest issues as well.
Well then, Mary, looking forward, how accommodating will our weather be for resuming harvest activity over the next week or so?
Well, the next 6 to 10 day outlook is calling for drier than normal conditions, which would hopefully favor getting back into the field and getting some harvest accomplished.
Or winter wheat planted.
Or getting the wheat planted or any other of your fall field operations. Unfortunately, when you go to the 8 to 14 day, it goes for wetter than normal. And another complicating factor is that with the grounds being so saturated coming into the period, it won't take a quarter of an inch, a half an inch of rain to put people out of the field again. It won't take much at all before the conditions will again be too wet to actually do anything. So you could be below normal for the week, but if you get it timed, it could be just enough to keep you pushing back access to the field, which is not at all what is desirable.
Will the temperatures help out at all?
We are looking for a moderating pattern on the temperatures. It should be warmer than normal. Hopefully we'll get more days like we had to end this week. Wednesday and Thursday were very nice fall weather. Sunshine, warmer temperatures, and a little wind could go a long way in at least drying that surface down enough so that people could get into the field.
Now, to slip this in quickly, the outlook for November has been posted, and what's it suggesting?
Well, the outlook for November is suggesting that it will be warmer than normal, which we would certainly be welcome, and equal chances for wetter or drier conditions. That would fit very much with an El Nino winter pattern, and they are still looking at the El Nino officially developing before the onset of winter.
All right. Well, we appreciate the update as always, and we'll see what this next week brings. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks, Eric.
Mary Knapp is along with us each Friday to get into the Kansas agricultural weather scene, research and extension climatologist at K-State. Thank you as well for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.